Welcome to chapter 13. So the first grammatical point that we're looking at here are so-called consecutive clauses, X and thus Y, where we have three conjunctions that we can use to combine them. Sadlan, sadlan kara, sandene. Differences that there might be between these three are not trivial, which is to say I can tell you what there are. If you do a corpus-based study of this, you might be able to find some fine differences in the usage situations, but I can't tell you at this point. And so these are like English thus and so as a consequence of that. Ivuk wants to take out a book. Ivuk wants to take a book, and thus and so he goes to the library. These are fairly important things in Mari, these clauses. And the reason for that is if you are coming from a Western European language and you're studying Mari, for example, very soon you will be wondering, how do I form because sentences in Mari? I'm tired because I didn't sleep that well. Well, it's a bit tricky because Mari originally didn't really do this fully. There are some strategies that you do encountered for so-called causal clauses in Mari. You have just a Russian strategy. I'm doing it because I know it, with потому что being just a bastardization of Russian потому что. Of course, purists don't especially like this version because it's a Russian conjunction in Russian syntax. Nowadays, a lot of people use this a relatively new conjunction, or like a phrase that serves as a conjunction. Molan manashkin, if you say why. Mitige oilem, I'm saying this. Molan manashkin, if you say why, because. Chen ulam, because I'm right. Okay, so here we don't have a Russian conjunction, but the syntax is still Russian, even if the conjunction is not. The original Mari way of doing this would be to have an embedded clause, and we're going to look at like clause embedding at a later stage once we get to see the participles in particular, with the conjunction kera. So here we have like cherlane milan. It's like cherlanash is to fall ill. Cherlaname is a passive participle, but passive participles can also be used as verbal nouns referring to the action as a whole. So the falling sick. And then with the dative, because Kera wants this by its government. So due to the falling sick, she lost her job, for example, that you embedded in it. But that's not necessarily what you're looking for if you are a speaker of, let's say, German, and you want to form your because sentences. Well, how do you go about life then if because makes your life difficult? Well, in a lot of cases where you would want to form a causal clause, if you think about it early enough, you can also do a consecutive clause. Rather to saying that I stayed at home because I'm sick, you could say, I am sick and thus I stayed at home. Just flipping the whole thing on the head. Point 2 is the negative converb or gerund in de. This is like, if you know Finnish, it's like matta mette, without doing something. We'll look at usage examples in a moment. It has the ending de. It's attached directly to the verbal stem. So remember, I'm no longer going to every time point it out. Now remember what happens when you attach a suffix that starts in a consonant, in this case de, to a verbal stem that ends in a consonant cluster, for example. So lutenale tunende, but kochkash, we have the verb stem kochk, and kochkde would not be pronounceable, so we have kochde. The usual happens, and as per usual, nothing much happens in the second conjugation. Yes, about the usage here, without going into, without doing something, blah blah blah. Without going to the water, you won't learn to swim. The negation of the simple past tense one, fortunately, is a lot easier than the formation of the positive forms that we looked at last week, because we use a negation verb, which here has the stem as it already did in the desiderative. Then we have sh as the marker of the past tense, and then the personal endings. The stem is in parentheses because in the first and second person singular, the is dropped in standard language. In dialect, you would find it with the stem there. And then it's followed by the conegative form. So it's here you'd have some conegative forms already. And yeah, shem, shich. So it is fairly regular. Yeah, quick note on the negation of existential and possessive clauses in the first past tense, that you basically just attached a positive ylje to uke to say that there was no money. Or if you say I didn't have time, you'd say japem, my time, uke ylje, did not exist. So you can't do the negation of the standard negation in existential clauses. Okay, words and word usage. There's not that much of that this week. We're seeing how approximate numbers can be formed by just juxtapositioning two numbers to have an interval. Like if you want to say 3 or 4 eggs, you just say 3, 4 eggs. If you say 1.5 to 2 millimeters, you say 1.5, 2 millimeters. Often students will get insecure when they see a hyphen in some kind of in a number interval and say, okay, what do I say here? And in Mari, in these cases, if you don't know what to say, don't say anything, because the Maris just like to juxtaposition things with no conjunctions. That gets us to the text. The text this week is a recipe for a common na, a Mari layered pancake. And I'll give you a warning, don't try this at home. I have tried this, my students have tried this, the recipe doesn't work. But you can find some good recipes for common na on the internet if you want to try this at home. It's probably a bit tricky if you don't have a proper Mari countryside oven, but well, maybe there are people out there who have more skill with these things than I do. And that gets us to the exercises already, as per usual. And once you have done that, you can stretch your legs and enjoy the song of the week, which this week is Kuzeti Malam Kulat, Oh, How I Need You, where we see that kulash, even though some reference materials say that kulash to be necessary is impersonal, it's not necessarily always the case, because if you are the person that is necessary, it can be in the second person. To me, you are necessary. Okay, so see you next week when I believe we meet the second past tense.